Faith Works Live. Here's your host, Rebecca Haynie.
Life is good, and I'm glad you're here. This is Faith Works Live. Rebecca Haynie is my name, and it wouldn't be the same without you. So I'm glad that you're here with us on another daily adventure in what it looks like to live out our faith in this crazy old world. I believe that you and that I and your kiddos were created for just such a time as this. But it can be confusing as to what that looks like and sometimes a little scary to live into that mission. So you are not all alone. We are in this together, and we're figuring out what it looks like to live our faith with humble confidence. And in particular, I think this is a great time to talk about what we're looking to in terms of legacy. It's a back to school kind of mentality for a lot of folks. This is the chapter when parents are making decisions, they're making lunches, they're buying school supplies, and they've maybe had some concerns about what school should look like, what education should look like for their kids. This was a very different season for our family. We've begun the homeschooling journey a couple of years back, which is something I honestly said that I wouldn't do. For those of you who know a bit about my history, I was homeschooled, so was my husband, and it worked for me. But we kind of went in a different direction with our family for several years. We've got a beautiful blended family, and we had a lot of plates juggling, and it was something that changed our minds around COVID. And God really just put on our hearts that we needed to do something different in our family. So we've begun homeschooling. And honestly, it's not without its pitfalls, but it's been working pretty well for us so far. And that's something that we need all the resources that we can get. If you have been faced with a crisis point in your kids' lives, there's a lot of folks out there. I'm hearing from so many friends that are either taking a second look at homeschooling or thinking there's got to be something better than what my kids are faced with, or flat out being indoctrinated with or scared of going on in our public school systems, which we talk about quite a bit on the show. Well, today, I think you better buckle up and listen. This is going to be an armor up conversation with our next guest. Jana Sheridan is on the line with us, and it was my privilege to get to meet her a couple weeks back. And Jana has a special ministry and resource for parents that need help in homeschooling, that realize their kids deserve better and they need to be equipped to get out and get going at home. Jana, it's a privilege to have you with us. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Well, I know that this is something that is near and dear to your heart. We're going to talk about your resources, your ministry at Homeschool 911. And I'd love to get into a little bit of your background. We'll get into the details of what it is that you offer. But why is education, and in particular, empowering parents to help get their kids out of public school and involved and in a good rhythm at home, why is this something that matters to you?
Well, there's tons of reasons, but I guess
we've got an hour, so we'll unpack it.
All right. Well, it kind of started, I guess, it got at least a good kick in the right direction. When I was a freshman in college, I was taking a class. I was at a Christian university, and I was taking a class called Marriage and Family Studies. And our professor said, "Oh, we're going to write a 10-page term paper this semester." And we groaned and we said, "What's it about?" And he said, "Well, how about something about marriage or family?" We're like, great.
Yeah.
So about that time is the first time I ever heard the word homeschooling. And my first thought was, well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. I'll write about that. So I went to the library, checked out every book. I had a 2-foot stack. I could barely carry it back to my room. And I stayed up all night pouring through every book, every article, everything I could get my hands on to find all the reasons why homeschooling is a really bad idea and is going to ruin our kids. And I couldn't find anything, not one negative word. And I started to panic, and then I started to pay more attention, and I kind of went, wait a minute. Maybe I'm supposed to be learning something here, and maybe God has something to show me in all this. So I stopped panicking and started tuning in to really what I was reading. And every single thing made me realize why I had the difficulties that I had coming through school, why I had the struggles, and why homeschooling was, in fact, the right thing, the best thing in just about any circumstance you can imagine. It's just always going to be better for the child and for the parents. I mean, I ended up with a 10-page paper, got an A+. My professor asked if he could keep my paper because it was so good.
Nice.
And I foolishly said yes with no copy for myself. But I got an A, but I also got an absolute conviction that I had to do this. Mm-hmm. And so long before I had a child or even a husband, I was convinced to the depths of my soul, I must do this. And it is just right, you know? So by the time my first child was born, I was already, you know, set in my intentions. Okay. And I ended up with 2, and then there were some foster kids in and out and whatnot. And through it all, I learned so much, you know, so much more. Now, in my own schooling, I became a teacher because honestly, I thought, well, that's one degree I know I'll use because I want to teach my own kids. And I thought, what better way to be the best teacher for my kids than to learn how to be a good teacher? Mm-hmm. Well, I learned later that nothing that I got in university teacher prep program did a whole lot to prepare me for teaching my children or anybody else's. It's very interesting. I've been in the classroom as a teacher, and then I've also been a school principal. And what I've seen some things.
Sure. Well, and let's talk about that, because I know that there are a lot of people that just over the last few years, and I think COVID played a big part of this, but also just the social unrest, the unraveling that has been, we've seen an explosion of it, but it's been cooking for a long time. Yeah. And so we've seen a lot of people are panicking now about the state of public schools, and they think, well, it wasn't always this bad. It wasn't bad when I was a student, maybe, but now that my kids or grandkids are in literally unsafe situations, to say nothing of what they're being indoctrinated into in terms of academics, in terms of the subject matter. It's oftentimes just unsafe for them to even be in classrooms with the violence that's there and the influences that are going on that way. What are some of the things that most bother you and that most cause you to lift up your voice and cry out that there is a better way?
Well, I don't know how hardcore Bible you want to go with this.
Sure.
Can you give me an idea?
Oh yeah, let's get biblical. Oh, I just mean like we're always up to get biblical around here.
All right. Okay. Before I even start this, I want to acknowledge 2 things. First of all, I am not at all, having been in the classroom myself, having been in the administrative office myself, I'm not here to bash teachers or administrators. I am one. I've been one. Anybody who is a Christian who has the heart to go into the public school system needs to understand that they are in a mission field, and that I think they're doing a great thing. And I would encourage them to do the best that they can in that environment. I have done my best, and I don't see what I'm doing now as being against that in any way. So I just want to say that first, because what I'm about to say can be perceived as extremely polarizing. People are going to basically either love it or hate it.
Well, then you're on the right show.
Yeah. So the thing is, and the thing is, if I just take the middle road, I'm not doing anybody any good.
Right.
You know, so that's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to serve people who need help bridging the gap between where they are right now and being bold enough to take a massive step in a different new direction. And that's the whole point. So yeah, I know that I'm going to talk a certain way. I know that I'm going to be very polarizing. I know that I'm pushing a very hardcore agenda here, but it's done in love. And it's done in a spirit of service to help people who are already somewhere on that path. And probably if a person is listening to this and their heart is leaning that way at all, they're really already on that path. And then you just keep walking.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say, there's an odd verse that really stands out with me. And it's when you look at prophecies in the Old Testament that have to do with John the Baptizer, it's very tail end of the Old Testament. And it's this little reference to him. And it says, you know, that he will come in the spirit and power of Elijah. For what purpose? We think we know his purpose. We do know his purpose. He's going to pave the way for Jesus. That's his purpose, is to make a straight path for Jesus, to make the world, get people ready for Jesus. Okay, but how does the Old Testament tell us he's going to do that? This is fascinating to me. It says he is going to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to the fathers.
Yes.
What does that got to do with Jesus? In the mind of God, it has everything to do with Jesus. I mean, let that sink in for a minute, you know?
Yeah.
Wow. And I feel that. That's what I want to do. I want to turn the hearts of fathers to their children, the hearts of children to their fathers. And if you look at everything that's happened to our country, it's all about tearing the family apart. And anything that happens that tears families apart is contrary to the will of God. God created families. God loves families. And he doesn't want anything to interfere in his design. So that's my purpose. I want to make sure that I help people. And this is what I know, educating children. But it's so much more than that. And that's what I learned by being a parent and being an educator myself, is that as I'm trying to live life with my children and teach my children, I realize that I'm learning about my relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't fulfill your role fully as a parent, you can't know the fullness of what God intended for you to learn through that relationship. You deprive yourself, not just your child, but yourself. You learn things about yourself and about God, partly because of the role that you're playing in your child's life, but also partly because you're having to rely on God for things that you never even imagined, you know? And it's hard. I mean, I'm not here to say, oh, you should homeschool because it's so easy.
Right.
It's not easy. It's hard. And that's why I'm here to help. You know, I know it's hard. I've been there. I've done it. I did K through 12 and beyond, you know, but there is this thing, you know, God created people with so many needs. Why did he make us the neediest thing in all of creation? And human babies are the worst.
Yeah.
They need care for longer than any other baby. Some babies literally hit the ground running, not humans.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and even a puppy with they don't have their eyes open yet. It's just a few weeks they're running. Just a few weeks they can be weaned and they're away from mother and they're on their own. Human babies, it's years. You know. Now, why would God make us so helpless if not for the very purpose of reinforcing that relationships are everything? And I believe that that's the purpose there. He also gave us instincts that kick in hard when we become mothers, right?
That's true. Things you don't even know that you know until you go down that road. And that's something that's very scary. I think in an analogous way, there's a lot of people that may sit on the precipice of this, you know, should I homeschool or what should I do with my kids' education? And we look at what's going on in the public school system and think, well, not that. But many people are paralyzed by fear. And I've had that conversation with women personally and women, you know, through social media. And they're saying, I've determined that this would be good for my children, or that at least it would be better than the situation they have in public school. I know that I need to do better by my child than that, but I'm scared. I'm scared that I'm not smart enough. I'm scared that I don't know what to do. I haven't been trained for this, that I'm going to mess up my kid. And I feel your pain, ladies. I know what that's like. And I think the enemy plays on those feelings of unworthiness and that fear.
Oh, yeah.
And keeps us to hold us back from being the powerful force that God has designed us to be in our families.
Absolutely.
But those same lies, I recognize those from back when I first started having babies, when I first started thinking, oh, well, maybe, you know, I don't know everything that I need to know as a mom. And yet here I am, like we've made it this far. And I realized that God puts those things within us. And he also puts people in our path to help us, to train us up. The memories of, you know, your parenting or how you were parented, or the books that you read, or the, you know, the wonderful saintly women and men in your church that can be mentors to you. Like God doesn't just abandon you and leave you out on your own to be not good enough and watch you fail. He wants you to succeed. And he puts all of these treasures in our path, resources in our path, people in our path in order to empower us. If we have open eyes to see and an open heart that longs to do what's right, that longs to continue to raise up our children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And if that's the cry of your heart, I believe he answers that.
Absolutely. So if you see that, you know, there is a challenge before you, that you believe that you need to homeschool your child, if you believe you're called to do that by the word of God, you've got to believe that God doesn't bring us to a challenge that he doesn't think we're capable of. You know, he didn't lay this in front of humanity and go, I know they're never going to be able to do this. He gave us this challenge because he said, no, this is going to make them, not break them.
Right.
This is going to be the making of them. It's all about becoming in this life, you know, becoming more like him. And what he gave us is relationships to learn from. Because if you go through the Old Testament, you will see, and in the New too, that you can go through and you can track all the different things that God says about his relationship to humanity. He's a friend. There's friends, brothers, parents, child, husband and wife. God describes himself with all of these relational terms in his relationship with us. We're supposed to learn about him and about our relationship with him from every single relationship that we have in our lives. And we just need to embrace it, and dig in and recognize that it's not about, the football team, and it's not about talented and gifted classes and SAT tests and stuff like that. That's not what it's about. It's about getting closer to God. And nobody can lead your child the way you can, because you already have a relationship with them that started before they were born. Nobody else can touch that. There's, I've said this many times. As a teacher, I was a middle school teacher. That was my specialty. But I walk in August and I've got 120 kids that I've never met. And it's going to take weeks just to learn their names. And I don't know anything about them. And my ability to actually lead them depends on my ability to make a relationship with them, because they're not there in my classroom out of a sincere desire to learn math.
Right.
There's not a middle school kid on the planet that goes, "Hey, Mom, I think I just really want to get an education today." They just don't. It's like, man, that algebra is just calling my name. They just don't. But, the point here is that when a child in a classroom or any place else, when a child learns, not an adult, when a child learns, they're doing it. Why? Because they're pleasing somebody. They're getting something out of it, but it's not an education. They're not doing it for the data. They're doing it for a relationship somewhere. Now, some children in public schools get their emotional and social needs met by excelling in school. I was one of those. I had to have an A in everything,
Yep.
But other kids do exactly the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get my social and emotional needs met by being a stinker, and standing out in my program in a whole different way.
That's true. Negative attention is still attention.
Yeah. But the point is, they're getting social and emotional needs met. That's what children do. And if we understand that, and see, that's why God made us needy, is so he could reach us. Wow. And so that we could reach our children for him. Those needs are how we reach people. So we look at the school system and we go, wait a minute now. So I just took my child who is impressionable, my 5-year-old duckling who is still patterning after everything he or she sees.
Uh-huh.
And I just dropped them in a foreign environment to follow strangers, not me.
Right.
Who should be your child's number one influencer? We have that now. That's a term now in our culture, influencer. Oh, we have influencers everywhere. Well, you as a parent are called by God to be your child's number one influencer. But if we park them at the feet of a stranger, we're giving up that role. We're saying, nope, I'm not doing it. And I mean, that hurts. That hurts to hear. It hurts me to say it. But it's the truth. We are abdicating that role when we park our children at somebody else's feet. And I wish fathers especially could get this. It's like, as a father, you are supposed to be number one with your child. But fathers right now are the number one people holding their children back from homeschooling.
Wow.
Which shocks me. Time and time and time again, I see mothers who are all for it and dads, no, I don't want that. My kid needs to do this and my kid needs to do that. And what he's wanting is bragging rights. He wants to go to the office and say, well, my kid's on the football team. Well, my kid, whatever. My kid can handle that terrible environment down there like a pro. But we're sending these children into a battle zone with no military training. And it's a job for parents. It's a job for teachers. It's a job for grown-ups. But it's no place for a Christian child. They're not prepared for that.
Amen to Jana Sheridan, who is our esteemed guest. She's kind of the grand poobah and the mastermind behind Homeschool 911, which is an awesome ministry to help parents be empowered to homeschool their kids. And she's got like a fast track program to get you ready to go like right now. So like when you feel that conviction, I've heard it said that one of the marks of spiritual maturity is the length of time between conviction and obedience. Between command and obedience. So if you hear something, if you hear, right, that if you hear the command of God, you hear the call of God, and you start to obey instead of to make excuses, that you just go ahead and say, all right, Lord, let's do this. And then the question of how comes to mind. So if you feel like you are being called into this, which I think Jana's making a very compelling case that Christian parents are called to educate, be the primary voice, educating and influencing their child in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. But then your question is, okay, how do I do it? We're going to get into some of those specifics and some of the resources that she offers to help empower parents to do this thing, to educate their kids well, and to feel like you aren't going half crazy while you're doing it, because that's always the other side of this. Jana's got some answers and some resources to put in your hands to help you. When we come back, you're listening to Faith Works Live. In today's world, security has never been more vital. And at FaithWorks Live, we're proud to partner with VeriGuard Security. It's a professional physical security service, and they're really raising the bar in security and private investigations. Whether you need a team of professional officers to protect what you have worked hard to build, or their mobile security units for multiple properties or large locations, from business or corporate properties to your home or neighborhood. Perhaps you've got an event coming up. They secure quality security coverage for events large and small, because it's about peace of mind and protecting you, your family, your team, and your property. Settle for nothing less than the best when it comes to your security. You shouldn't have to compromise. When it comes to security, you can trust VeriGuard. Contact them today at veriguard.us. That's VARA guard.us. For security service, you can trust VeriGuard. To Faith Works Live. I'm so glad you're here. We're having an awesome conversation about what it takes for parents to be the primary teachers in their kids' lives. And if you've been thinking about homeschooling, if it's been something that's on your mind, maybe you've already made that decision, and then you looked around and you're like, oh, wait, I have to do this thing. This is going to get real. What is this going to look like? Are the kids all gathered around the kitchen table? And, do we need to have fourth period and fifth period and be doing gym class in our basement? What does this look like for me? Well, you're in luck. We have an esteemed guest, Jana Sheridan, on our line today. And she is the mastermind behind Homeschool 911, which is a ministry that she's set up to empower parents with resources to, number one, fast track your way to homeschooling. If you need to pull your kids from public school and you've been convicted and you're like, okay, I need to do this and it needs to happen now, she's got a jumpstart kind of program, as well as other resources to help empower parents to educate their kids and be that primary spiritual as well as academic influence and relational influence, which I really love that you brought up, Jana, the major learning and development that happens in relationship, that you really can't divorce our needs and children's development from relationship. I just thought that was brilliant. And I would like to talk about some of those resources that you have and why they're designed the way that they are. So the platform is yours. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I just want to share one more thought, though, before we move off from the topic of, parents who may feel a little bit unsure about their qualifications. God didn't set up those qualifications, but human beings created the notion of experts in this field. And we don't need to worry about that. And I can tell you, as somebody who's had teacher training, somebody who's been in every possible role in a school, that training did nothing to prepare me for what I faced. And I was exceedingly aware. And this is why I'm doing what I'm doing right now, because I was so aware at my desk as a principal. It occurred to me early in the game, and it compounded daily ever since. I was not doing anything that I was trained to do at the university. What I was doing in that desk was parenting. I was parenting other people's children. And I can't tell you how many times I had students sitting across from me at that desk to whom I said, I love that you want to have this conversation and that you trust me, but your mother and your dad deserve to have this conversation with you. It's not my place but I need help. I know you do. But I will tell you what I think about your question. But I want to ask you to please give your parents the honor of having this conversation with you. I don't know how many times I said that. And it was very, very clear to me that, every day, it was like what Jesus said about people. There's sheep without a shepherd. Mm-hmm. And you get 20 or 30 of them in a room. You can't parent 20 or 30 people in a room at once and convey a bunch of material. Mm-hmm. You can't do it. These children are spending most of their day without a parent. And the other side of the story is if somebody's mom which of course that happens, they have to come and get a kid out or whatever. As a teacher and as a principal, I can tell you the air in the building completely changes. Every eye turns and they are hungry eyes, because they're just vicariously loving that little moment with their mom. Even though their mom's not there. I've seen it 100 times and it makes me sad. It's like, how much better? And I'm talking about kids that they're doing well. They're fine. They're not crying. They're not upset, but they're also not at home where they want to be. I've seen it. The kids accept it. The teachers accept it. The parents, everybody accepts it. It's the new normal. But the point here is it's a new normal. That wasn't normal until the last 100 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something that I bring up in conversation a lot with people who, again, have this kind of inferiority and they've got that fear about it, that this is not the way things have always been. Like for the last several thousand years, homeschooling was considered perfectly normal.
Exactly.
And, expected. In fact, it's your responsibility as a parent. And I think it's a sacred one, but we've outsourced it over the last couple of 100 years. And there's all sorts of fascinating documentaries, if you're looking for research on that, as to why that happened and the background of the public school, public education system. And in fact, I had a real good conversation with Lee Bortons here recently, which I can, recommend that podcast once everybody's done listening with this one, about why the public school system is designed to take kids away from the family, like even at its best, not to, decry anyone who's currently trying to work as a missionary, essentially in a flawed system, but still. The ideal is that parents are nurturing their children, are raising their children. And in fact, that's the biblical model that we see. The Bible doesn't talk about the public school system because that didn't exist. The Bible presumes the design of the family that God set forth, where fathers and mothers raise their children. I mean, if we look at Deuteronomy, for example, I think that's a really powerful example in Deuteronomy 6, when God is revealing himself, the essential nature of God to his people. And he's calling all of Israel together and he's saying, "Hear Israel, the Lord your God is one." It's the Shema. It's the revealing of the very nature and essence of God and who he is, and to be known by his people. And what does he tell people? Like in the very next verse, I think it's verse 6. And he says, "The Lord your God is one, that you shall teach this to your children when you're sitting in your home, when you're walking in the way, when you're going out, coming in, lying down, let's just like doing life." That your kids would be there. This is the time when you teach them about me, about God. This is how I am revealed. It's in your family life. That's education. That's homeschooling.
Yes.
That's how you raise up a child. And so why do we think we can't do this?
Right. And, we think it because we've been sold a bill of goods. As soon as you create an expert, automatically, de facto, everybody else is unqualified. That's just a fallacy. But listen to 2 Corinthians 6. I don't think it's about verse 16. It says, "What agreement has the temple of God with idols? We are the temple of the living God. Just as God said, I will dwell in them and walk among them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Therefore, come out from their midst and be separate, says the Lord. I will welcome you. I will be a father to you, and you shall be sons and daughters to me." Now, my question is, if you, parent, have separated yourself from the world for God, why would you send your children back into it?
An excellent question.
That's a scary question to me. I mean, it's a really scary question.
Yeah.
So it also, Matthew 28, the Great Commission, it says, "Teaching them to observe all that I commanded you." Now, we usually focus on the teachings, but in the case of children, especially, we need to focus on the other word. Observe means obey. Teach them to obey. Don't just teach them what the commandments are. Teach them how to obey. That's a lifelong, I've got to have you by my side so you can see this. Paul said, "Follow me as I follow Christ." You need to say that to your kids. And if you're nervous because as I follow Christ, I don't know. Well, is your child's public school teacher following Christ?
Mm-hmm.
If you're worried about your walk with God, then fix that.
Right.
But your child needs to follow you as you follow Christ, and nobody else can do that for you. And if you do it this way, it binds your family together, and you have an incredible amount of joy and love, and it's incredibly rewarding, and you look forward to eternity together. And I cannot begin to say enough. I wouldn't trade 1 minute, even the tough minutes. I wouldn't trade a minute that I have with my boys. It's so life altering. I can't even imagine having to miss that. And I know that some people are going to say, well, yeah, but I don't have any money, or and there's a lot of things that make it hard. That's true. But I've tried to create something I call GAP, and that stands for Getaway Plan, and GAP.
Mm-hmm.
And that came about in the middle of me creating something different that I'll talk about in a minute. But while I was creating a bigger program, I realized I needed this one. So I took a break and made this one first. Okay. GAP is an emergency curriculum for kids. And I've got 4 different versions so that all the grades, K through 12, are covered. No matter what age your child is, there's a GAP that's right for you. So the getaway plan idea is, what if your child's being bullied? And you're like, I don't want to send my child to school tomorrow. And yet I don't have a clue how to homeschool. There are some states that actually require you to submit a plan in writing of how you're going to educate this child if you withdraw them from the school. So I realized that, people cannot pull their kid out. They can't do what you just said, which is, I've heard the call and my spiritual maturity demands that I answer it now, but yet they can't, because I'd have to study for 6 weeks to figure out how to do this. And I've got a job and blah, 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 and that stuff, that blah, blah, blah is real,
Sure.
A job is important. So I try to create GAP to answer this need where you can pull a kid out. Let's say that it's 9:00 at night and you're just in angst because you don't want to send them tomorrow. Then don't. Get on my website, homeschool-911.com, and you can order the GAP right now. You can download that thing. You could literally be ready to homeschool in 20 minutes.
Wow.
Because that's about how long it'll take you to read it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's simple. It's just easy. It's every single thing you need to educate your child for 4 to 6 weeks. So the reason I say it's expandable is this. If your child is in a traumatic situation at school, and some of them are, it's estimated that 7% of high school students will at least once during high school try to commit suicide. I mean, what?
Horrible.
7%? So the school system's failing these kids, obviously. Mm-hmm. We have middle school kids cutting themselves constantly. The number of kids that do that, even in Christian schools, would blow your mind.
Wow.
And they do that, some of them say, because they're trying to let the bad out. Mm. And it's like, for heaven's sake, bring these babies home. Oh, my goodness. Just hold them. If all you do is hold them, you're going to do better than what we can do in the school. Okay? Because we're not allowed to touch them. And kids need to be touched. Mm-hmm. I mean, they do. They need to be held. I don't care if they're 14, they need to be held. So created GAP. It's everything you need. You don't have to buy any other books. You don't have to, and there's no worksheets. It's the old way. It's sidecar approach. It's keep your child by your side and live life. Okay. Live it together. The core of GAP is the history program. And there's reasons why I think the history program should be the core of just about any curriculum. But in GAP, the history program is designed to draw in your extended family and give this child just totally overhaul their social structure. You are removing them from their system that they have of getting their social and emotional needs met. And as humans, that's a very big deal. We really have these needs. They are real. They are important. And these kids, they learn in that environment how to get their needs met. That's the very problem. And some people, why the kids need to be in school to be socialized. Like, really? Do you want your kids socialized? Think about that.
With that society?
We talk about the evils of socialized medicine, but nobody even notices. Did you pick up on the fact that decades ago we instituted socialized education? Mm-hmm. And it's pitching socialism hard to our children and teaching them that it's right and normal to live in a socialist society. And it is absolutely doing that.
Wow.
So, we have whatever values we have at home, but our kids are being taught a completely different set. and it's bound to engender strife in the home.
Yeah.
Especially when they hit teenage years. So this program is designed to pull the family back together and replace that artificial social structure that they've been dependent on in the school system with a family structure that's reunited, that they feel that support, not just from mom, dad, but also brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, grandparents, cousins. It's all there. And the point is, you need to see that you're not alone when you've been removed from your people. You need new people, and it should be your family. It's designed to reconnect these children with their family. I mean, yes, they're going to learn some history stuff in there too. They're going to learn some geography. They're going to learn some history. They're going to learn some anthropology. They're going to learn all that stuff, but they're going to do it in a family context in a way that draws in relatives and helps them remember where they came from and connect with who they are in their family context, and gives them a lease on that legacy that you talked about. It's simple, but it's effective, and everybody that looks at this program goes, oh, that's so cool. Yes, it is. It's supposed to be so cool. It's also designed to draw everybody together and put the whole thing back together the way God intended.
Mm-hmm.
And then all the other subjects, there's an emphasis on practical things. There's an emphasis on basic skills. I guarantee you everything that's in the GAP programs all the way through is stuff that parents are totally qualified to teach. There's nothing in it that's going to make you go, oh man, I can't do that. It's all stuff that's like, well, yeah, I know that. Well, you need to share that. It's all basic, practical. And, tons of people, when they look at curriculum, they're like, how come nobody teaches this and that and the other? There's all these practical things. You see these lists on the internet all the time. It's like, here's 100 practical things that kids are never taught in school. Well, guess what? A bunch of those are in GAP. Not all of them, because it's only a 6-week, 4 to 6 week program. The reason that I say it's expandable is the first 2 weeks, I really recommend that kids who are traumatized in any way, whether they've been bullied severely or what have you, kids who are coming out of a traumatic situation, I highly, highly recommend that you take the first 2 weeks off and play, because children learn that way. But the most important thing they need to learn is to reconnect with their parents. So the first day of school, teachers usually do not launch into their textbooks. They play games, get to know your games. They do all kinds of quizzes that don't mean anything, just to find out what your favorite kind of ice cream is. They just want to get to know the kids. And I understand that. I've done the same thing, and I want to get to know them too. But the point is, it's a justifiable use of your time educationally to reconnect with your children, because it is your connection with them and your relationship that makes all future efforts at education successful. It's the foundation of every single thing you will ever teach your child is your relationship. So that's why I think that 2 weeks is well spent academically. And I guarantee you, as long as you aren't locking them in their room, they're going to learn stuff.
Right.
Do not lock them in the closet or the room. But if, no matter how much they whine. Oh, and I'll tell you something else. I had a girl in my school. So help me. I used to say, I know it's Monday because she's in my office crying.
Aww.
And the crying was all about, I don't want to be here. I want to go back to public school. I want to go back to my friends. You see what I'm getting at? She was removed from her social context, and she didn't know how to get her needs met in a new environment. Now, you pull a kid out of public school, private school, wherever, they're probably going to gripe for the first 2 weeks. They're going to be a real gloomy Gus for a while. They're going to gripe. They're going to complain. They're going to make you wish you would have left them in. That's normal. And it doesn't mean you did the wrong thing. It means they need to adjust, and you need to support them through that. And taking time off to play is the best way to reconnect. And they're going to probably be like, oh, go to the zoo. I don't want to.
Yeah.
Oh, go see a movie. I don't want to, and part of this, I kid you not, part of this, they are testing your resolve, because school is not a safe place for them. And they know that, but they've adapted to it.
Yeah.
And they know how to do that. But if you've ever adapted to an environment that tested you, that made you unhappy, that wasn't safe for you, that it's very difficult to lay that aside and feel safe again and just relax. And I'll tell you right now, your kids don't want to relax at home if they think there's any chance they're going to get put back in.
Okay. That's
So
a good point.
So if you don't commit, and this is the way it works, you have to commit 110%. I'm telling you, you need to look them in the eye and you need to say, sweetheart, I love you dearly. I hate that you're unhappy right now, but there's nothing under the sun that could ever persuade me to put you back in there. I love you too much to do that. And they're going to blow up at you and all that. And you need to just love that hurting child and don't feel like, well, they're just misbehaving. Well, they're not grateful. No, it's not any of that. They're hurting because they've lost something. And you have to let them grieve. You have to be ready to stand in and say, I'm going to be there for you. I'm going to meet those needs. You can't just leave them. Well, I got them out of there. They've got their room. They've got their Xbox. What do they want? They want you. You know, you've got to put some time in. Look at how kids are with each other. They're on that phone 24/7, literally. Some of them leave it running while they just do other stuff, just because kids don't alone well. You know it because when they were little, what were they doing? Tugging on your sleeve constantly. Mommy, look at me, watch me, help me. Every 2 seconds. Drove you crazy. But the thing is, they're made that way. God designed them that way so that you could teach them. That's the whole point. So don't hate it. Love it. Learn to love it. Because
Embrace
that right
it.
there, yes, that right there is God's design for you teaching that child. They want your attention. So give it. You know, just keep them right there. Give them little things to do. It takes longer to get through your day that way. Great. That just makes it feel like your life is longer. It's okay. Did you really want it to be over that quick?
I love it.
Someday you're going to look back and, oh man, it passed so fast. You know, it's like, yeah. So enjoy every minute of it, every sleeve pull, all the tears, all the griping, all the complaining. I'd go back and listen to every bit of it again.
And that's the coolest thing. I love everything that you're saying. Like you said, I feel like I just got $1,000 worth of coaching. So thank you, Jana, for your generosity.
You kind of did, but I mean, yeah. So here's the thing. You buy Gap. It's less than $100. All right. So you're not having to commit to, oh my word, I'm going to have to spend $1,000 on a year-long curriculum that I don't know anything about and I may hate it. It may not work for us. That's right. You know, and I've done that before. I've bought a whole year curriculum, and then hated it and had to go buy another one. That's a big ouch.
Yeah.
So I designed Gap. Say, hey, it's 30 days. If you hate it, it'll be over soon, you know, and you haven't invested a ton of money. So you get to try out homeschooling. But my cautionary word is don't go into homeschooling thinking we're just going to try it. We'll give it a try. If you try homeschooling, you will fail. You have to commit to homeschooling or you're going to lose. I'm just saying.
Sure.
If you say, well, we'll try it, but you might be going back, they're never going to drop their defenses and reacclimate to your home. They're not going to do it because they've adapted all kinds of strategies to keep themselves safe in that public school. And they're going to retain that if they think there's any chance they're going back. And some of them will retain it for a long time, even if you tell them they're never going back because they're not sure.
Yeah.
They don't know how it happened in the first place.
True.
My mother never told me I was going to school. I didn't know anything about it. I was 4 years old, actually. She's like, so we're going to do something new this week. I'm like, okay, I trust her. Right.
Yeah.
So we got it. And so she takes me to kindergarten and she says, you're going to be here and play and make some friends. I'm like, okay. You know, so I did it and we did it all week long and I was worn flat out. And Friday, I will never forget this as long as I live. I'm 4 years old, almost 5. And she picked me up from school and I'm sitting in the back seat and she goes, well, what'd you think? And I said, that was okay, but I'm glad it's over. And she, and then there was this silence that was so ominous because I'll tell you this too. My mother, I think she kept James Dobson's not Dare to Discipline, but The Strong-Willed Child. She kept that next to her Bible. So anyway, she was terrified, I think, to tell me what she had to tell me next. And she says, well, actually, it's not really over. And I'm like, what? and she's like, I said, you mean I have to go? And she says, yeah, it's actually the law. And I'm like, how long? And she goes, 13 years. And I said, it's what? You know, it's like almost 3 times my lifetime, you know. And I'm like, what? And she goes, or if it's college.
Wow.
And I'm like, I felt like I got punched in the gut in that moment. It changed because I thought I had a life plan. I mean, I know I was 4, but I thought I had a life plan. I thought I knew what it looked like, you know. And she just said, nope, everything you just thought your life was going to be is gone. You know, that is what I felt in that moment. It's like, oh, I mean, turn my world on its ear, you know. So Now, I realize I may be an extreme case, but I think that there's an element of that, and I know totally. I told them that there's some kids that are like, I can't wait to go to school. I can't wait to go to school. That's fine. And I know that some kids love it. I know that. But that doesn't mean, children also love candy, but they shouldn't eat it by the bucket load. There's a lot of things children love that may or may not be in their best interest.
Yeah.
So that's why they have parents.
That's true. And as you've said, if you're acclimated to a broken system, then it might feel like the new normal. And especially if for many parents that might be listening to me, you probably, have gone through the homeschooling or through the public school experience. And it's something that seemed like it was normal to you. So now the homeschooling seems abnormal. But again, all of that has been turned on its head just really in the last split second of history when you look at the human experience. And I think ultimately, instead of looking at what is normal as deemed so by the godless and lost and confused society all around us, we need to look at what's biblical. And God's people have to we really have to break up with our love affair of being normal or cool or, deemed to be acceptable by society, because that's not what we're here for. And I'm not saying you absolutely have to turn your kids into weirdos, although for me it worked.
It worked for me.
It worked for me.
My kids said we're weird and we're proud of it.
Right,
and
exactly.
I'm like, go boy, go.
I'm rocking it. I just got to tell you, normal is not all it's cracked up to be. But at the same time, if you look at if you want to be on the quote unquote right side of history, just look at how these vast experience of civilization has progressed and made such progress based on the inculcation of learning at the feet of mother and father. And in particular, the people that have been most spiritually healthy. And I know we're kind of running out of time here, but I am so encouraged by ministries, by resources like yours, Jana, that are saying, no, you as parents, you can do this. God designed you for this. And this will actually help. It will help fulfill you. It will help meet your child's needs. It will bring you closer as a family. It will help, to actually turn on some of those synapses in the brain that have been dumbed down and turned off and tuned out by this crazy system that we've set up and called normal in a public school, let alone, avoiding the landmines of the politicization and the crazy transgender indoctrination and just this alternative history that's going on, and the hatred for society in general and the communism, and just pick your poison, y'all. It's happening in public schools, let alone, but don't you let that 5-year-old pray over her peanut butter and jelly sandwich in the lunchroom. This is the new quote unquote normal. And if that's normal, count me out. If that's normal, the kids deserve better than that. I think we all know that. I think we just justify it for various life reasons. And I just don't think most of those excuses hold up anymore. But you have to have a plan, which is what you've been providing. Mm-hmm. And what you're, again, it's not a huge investment. It's less than $100 to get that initial 6-week course and that initial 6-week lesson plan. And I think that's well worth it as an investment. Like you said, though, I appreciate that thought process that says we're going to follow where God leads. And we're not just going to experiment and kind of do the hokey pokey with the kids and, just get them on this merry-go-round, and they have to be able to acclimate to that. So I think that's good wisdom too. But I do like the idea of having a plan. And so if you can get this blueprint, go to homeschool-911.com. That's homeschool-911.com. And to make it easy, I can link to that in the description down below this podcast. And you can check it out for yourself. There's also some free resources on the website as well, so people can kind of get a feel for what it's going to be like, right?
A little bit. But there's also, the step up from GAP is while your kids are doing GAP, you get to do Homeschool Success Blueprint, which is a 6-week online course for parents. There's about 45 videos. It'll tell you absolutely everything you need to know about how to homeschool legally, the philosophy behind it that'll help you get through your days, how to organize your time and your resources if you're working or, whatever, how to organize your materials, how to choose the right curriculum, everything, teaching methods, even basic teaching methods for parents that work in the home, and how to not turn your home into a public school classroom. I guess if I could say one thing, that parents, remember who founded this country. It was homeschoolers. Our founding fathers were homeschooled. And they turned out documents that are mind-bogglingly brilliant. And they were capable of thinking, reading, and writing on that level, which today very few kids in high school can even get their head around that stuff. So we know that it works. It has always worked, and you can do it, and I can help you. And, you know, I've got, like I said, you've got GAP for the kids, Homeschool Success Blueprint for the parents. If you're really in the weeds and you just don't know how to get out of it, I've got coaching available. So all of that is available on my website. I've tried to make the GAP program and the Homeschool Success Blueprint program are stupidly cheap for what they are. I mean, it's ridiculous. I have so many people tell me you need to charge like 3 times as much for this stuff. I'm like, well, I don't want to do that because I want it to be accessible to everybody. I know it's worth more than that. It really is. And I'll tell you one reason, because it was not created with AI chat garbage. You know, this is real. Yes. I wrote every word of this myself and out of my brain, you know, I did not, out of what I have learned by dealing with real children. I did not harvest this from random articles that were also harvested from other random articles. So, you know, this is maybe one of the last online courses ever to be created by an actual human. Now that AI has come along where it has, you know, so
be a part of this historic moment.
Yes, be a part of this. But yeah, so and you know, and I will admit that the one-on-one coaching is not so cheap. But you know, if you look at it from the standpoint of, hey, if this is what's going to make the difference between succeeding and failing at homeschooling, if you spend some money on this, I'm going to tell you what most people try to do is, well, let's just do private school. Well, even for one child, you're looking at over $200,000 over the lifetime of that child.
It's a heart attack.
What I'm charging is a drop in the bucket compared to that. I think that it's extremely, you know, justifiable. And also, very shortly, I have financing available for people who need coaching. How cool is that?
That's awesome.
So it would actually cost people less than $100 a month to get professional coaching to set you up so that I can even set it up. I can help people do a custom curriculum even. So the stuff they're actually interested in, the stuff that you want them to learn, and tell you how to get a transcript done and, you know, all the kind of things that make high school parents go, ugh, you know. All the kind of things that are scary for people in high school. What about math? What about science? What about transcripts? Oh my goodness. Like, yeah, lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my. Give me a call. We'll work it out.
That's excellent, Jana.
Yeah.
That is so amazing. I am truly thrilled at what you're offering through Homeschool 911. Again, check out the link in the description in this podcast. It's homeschool-911.com. Check out Jana's fine resources. There looks like there's a plan here for your family. If you are feeling the call, if you know that this is something that is right for you, for your kids, and thinking, okay, I've got the what, I've got the why, now how? How do I do this? Here I am, send me, and here's the how.
I almost forgot. I've even got a coaching group that I'm trying to start. It hasn't started yet, but it's about to. It's $29 a month, and so there's going to be like a weekly call, you know, that everybody can get on.
Awesome.
And it's a Facebook group. It's Facebook group based, and there'll be like a weekly, you know, so people can join that too. So that's really cheap, you know, $29 a month. And you can actually, I'll go live on there and talk to people once a week for, you know, however long.
Again, you're not alone. There's that guidance, and we're doing this together. There's that fellowship aspect, which again, we're learning in relationship. Look at that. It's come full circle.
Yep. It does.
Jana Sheridan, thank you first of all, for your dedication and for putting this out there, for having the heart to do this, to empower parents. And I would say even to grandparents who are listening and want to encourage the folks in their life that care about what their grandkids are facing and about their future. Obviously you do. So this would be an awesome way to help empower your son, your daughter, your sons and daughters-in-law to be able to give your grandkids the best, to be able to approach raising your kiddos biblically. I mean, I think this is a no-brainer, really. So check out homeschool-911.com or the link below this. Jana, it's been a joy. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure.
I truly think this is a great, absolutely phenomenal resource for people to get their feet under them as they're homeschooling if they've decided that's what we need to do. And again, why wouldn't you? If you're looking at the public school system versus homeschooling, even as we learn along the way, it's going to be best for the kiddos. I truly do believe that they deserve better than the indoctrination centers that we have in our local neighborhoods. Let's just be honest. They don't allow God in there. They just don't. They don't allow God in there.
If God's not welcome there, then I don't want my kids there.
Yeah. Let's redirect, guys. Like we need a radical mind shift. And I think that's happening. I think that's happening among the people of God. But how do we do it? That's where practical resources like this come in. So check them out. Again, they're linked below, and maybe we could talk to Jana in the future and help encourage the homeschooling moms and dads out there as we walk, as we in our going out and our coming in. We'd love to have you back, Jana.
Wonderful. I'd love to be back.
Thanks so much for listening to Faith Works Live. Hopefully this has been an encouraging discussion for you. And if someone needs this dose of encouragement, maybe a little bit of oomph, like a get off the bench and put me in, coach, then we are happy to serve. Pass this along to a friend. Find us on Facebook at Faith Works Live there. We're also on YouTube if we haven't been canceled yet. And until next time, we have a mission. So let's be about it. Our mission is to love God, serve people, and live free. This is Faith Works Live.